Hi everyone, glad to be back with you with another one of our Deeper Peace of Mind courses. This time we are doing this book study on the Enlightened Gardener. And the reason I chose this book was because, well, I would love us to cover all of Sid's books at some point because they are the original teachings, I guess. And for me, many of you know, recently I've spent the last 2 years out in my garden. And so a lot of the references, a lot of the metaphors, a lot of the images that came to mind in the book were just really resonant with where I was at the point at which I chose what we're going to do for our next Deeper Peace of Mind course. So as we've done in previous book studies, if you haven't done a book study with me before, this is the way that we do it. So we read the book together and we'll break it down over the next 4 weeks into 4 chunks. And so this week we are doing the first 5 chapters. So go all the way up to the start of chapter 6. And then that's what I'm going to talk about on this video. But it's always best, as we do these, for you to read the chapters first, reflect on them yourself and see what comes up for you, and then watch this video. Otherwise, you're just going to be reading it through the filter of what's come up for me. And what's come up for me is kind of irrelevant. I'm going to share it with you because why not? I think it's beautiful to share insights and what we're taking from things. But what you're not doing is trying to get the same things I am from the passage. You're trying to see what's there in this writing for you as you listen. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. Like, you're going to read it, stuff's going to come up for you that's so uniquely yours. You won't even see the same paragraphs that I do. You won't get touched by the same words that I do. I've read this book so many times and I've never seen these sentences before that I want to share with you and talk about today. So really, really own this as your journey of exploration through this book. Now, the first thing I want to say, and I probably say this about every Sid book that we cover, is that it's not even the words that are written here that as the wonderful thing about reading Sid's work. It's the quiet space from which he teaches that kind of comes over me, envelops me like a blanket. I don't go looking for that, but I pick the book up and I notice by the time I'm a couple of chapters in, I've settled, I'm quieter. And that's the power of being in the presence, if you like, of someone who has really seen this for themselves, has really touched this space that we're looking towards, that we're made of, and brings that into every piece of work that he does. So there's that element that just I was reminded of as I started to read. And the other thing about this story that I love is that the gardener, Andy, he speaks the same words to the 4 people who attend the conference, and they're all variably impacted. Right? One person doesn't hear a thing. One person gets really touched really early on. Janet gets touched really early on. She's all ears. She gets goosebumps, right? She doesn't understand it, but she knows there's something here. And at other points, the other professors, they get touched by various different things along the way. And to me, that's really true with my teaching as well. I know some of you hear something right away, and some of you more of a slow burn, and some of you are like, there's nothing here for me, and off you go, right? Probably not those of you who are still here in Deeper Peace of Mind now. And so I just want that to be a comfort for you when you're trying to share what it is that you know with people, and it seems like sometimes people aren't listening. It's because they're just not ready to hear just yet. That's not because you're not doing it right. It's not because there's anything you can do about that. It's like just the way of it that sometimes people are ready to hear and sometimes they're not. Okay. So what struck me with this first chapter, and I've got it in my hands because I've got some passages that I've highlighted that I want to read to you. But what I took from the first 5 chapters was this real sense of simplicity. It's so simple, so simple that in a nutshell, if I had to summarize, it's like thought creates reality. So you get to choose a positive experience through the way you use thought. Full stop. Do more of that. That's it. Oh, but it's not as simple as that. It's too hard. I can't control my mind. Sometimes it goes off. Yeah, I know, but you can use the power of thought in a positive way, or you can use it in a negative. If you want to have a nice life, you use it in a positive way. Do more of that. Full stop. So here are some of the paragraphs that I underlined that really pointed to that. So there's one bit where I can't remember which one it is. Eric it is. He's the main character, right? And he's talking to Andy the gardener. And he said, I guess the gardener says to him, I guess you're not getting that much joy from the work that you do at the moment. And Eric says, no, at the moment I can't say I do, I admitted. The old gardener looked at me straight in the eye and said, well, why not think about some of the successes you've had in your work? With an infectious smile, he said, that should help you feel good. After all, there's no sense being unhappy when you can be happy now, is there? That's it. That's all of Sid's teaching in a nutshell. The guy's thinking about his work. He's thinking about how he's not enjoying it. And the gardener says, well, why don't you just think about some of the successes? I mean, that is, our minds can't believe it can be that simple, but we have this gift of thought, and we have this gift of free will that we get to use our thoughts wisely or not. And you know that because you've got experiences and circumstances that are not as you like them in your life. We all have that. So those circumstances, whatever they might be, it might be your weight, your money, someone around you not behaving as you want them to do, your job. And sometimes you really care and feel miserable about that. And sometimes you have a lovely experience of the thing that you think you have a problem with. And sometimes you have no experience of it. And the thing doesn't change. Just the way you're using your mind in that moment is creating your feelings, your thought and your feelings. That simple. I mean, we could just stop there and stop the whole of Deeper Peace of Mind and just do that. Why we think it's more complicated than that, I don't know. It's just the mind wants it to be harder than that. We'll protest and tell you all the reasons why it's not that simple and it can't be possible. And then there's a bit later on where Eric is talking to Andy and he asks him to talk about this power of thought. And Andy, the gardener, says, mind combined with the power of thought and the power of consciousness are the determinants we use to direct ourselves through life. We can choose to use them wisely or unwisely. If we use them wisely, our lives become a long series of bewildering periods where we feel utterly lost. So true, right? So true. On the other hand, if we use them wisely, we will experience more contented lives. And then a little bit further down the page, well, actually directly underneath that, Eric is saying, I told the gardener I doubted that such a theory would make much difference to the lives or in the lives of my clients. Andy looked at me and smiled and said, I'm not really interested in your clients' problems. After all, I'm not a therapist. That's true of my work too, I don't know if you've realised that. But I'm not a therapist. A therapist is someone who you come to and you pour out all your problems and then you lay them out on the table and then you and the therapist have a really good look at all those problems and what might be causing them and how you can change your life and how you can change your thinking so that you can have a better experience of life. It's like you pour out the content of your mind and you and your therapist take a look at it together. I don't work with people's problems. They're not relevant to helping people find peace of mind. I want to talk to you about how your whole experience is created. I want to talk to you about mental health. I want to talk to you about peace of mind and where that's found. I know you keep wanting to bring your problems. And when I'm, caught up in my thinking, I want to take my problems to people too. And you can take them to a therapist if you like, and you can mull all over them. And see how far that gets you. But that's not what we're doing here at A Little Peace of Mind. We're not your therapists. We're here to educate you about mental health. That's it. And that's why, and Sid wouldn't talk to people about their problems. Like, very rarely did he coach people, right? And if he did, he would just point out it's their thinking. You know, if you've watched the program that we did with Linda Pransky, and he asked her about the ways in which she used her mind to find, you know, enjoyment in her relationship with George. And then he said, just, well, do more of that, right? Just do more of that. Really, really simple. Is much more interested in how you use your mind, not the end byproducts of how you use your mind. And then there's an example with Mrs. Taylor. You'll know what I mean when you get to that part of the book. So Mrs. Taylor that's experiencing this depression, and what Eric points out to her is, why don't you try to stop thinking about all your troubles? These are your thoughts. And you have the power to think whatever you want. Why do you keep thinking about your problems? As if that's going to get us anywhere. I mean, it's so simple. You're like, oh my goodness, yeah, I think about my problems a lot. But you don't have to. It's not compulsory. It's creating distress and suffering. We think it's what we're thinking about that's causing the problem, but it isn't. The things that if we're thinking about our jobs, we're thinking that the problem is being created by the job, but it's not. It's coming through how we're using our mental activity, how we're using this gift of thought. That's what's creating the suffering, not the work. It never comes from what we're thinking about. So the fact that we sit and think about our problems all day, like say you think about your problems 8 hours a day or 5 hours a day or even 1 hour a day, that's exactly how much time you're going to spend in suffering. There's a direct correlation. But what if you didn't have to think about your problems? What if every time your problems came to mind, you were just not interested in indulging them? I'll figure that out later. Mind-blowing and yet so incredibly simple. Mrs. Taylor says, why didn't anyone tell me before that my own thoughts were responsible for most of my anxieties and mental stress? I would say all of your anxieties and mental stress. Like people, when you've been in this understanding a while, you're like, yeah, my thoughts create my experience. I know that. And then we dive back into thought and spend time ruminating and thinking about our problems as if there is some traction to be had there, as if there is some value to be had there. Taking no ownership for the fact that we're creating our own distress. We are the ones creating our own distress. And because we are the ones that started that thought churning, we are the only ones that can put it down. Taking accountability for our moods, accountability for our emotions, accountability for our struggles, and compassion for them as well. Because as human beings, we create struggles for ourselves. It's part of what we do. Innocently. So there's a bit here where it really does kind of put it into a nutshell, the simplicity of it. Even after so many years in the field, it wasn't until I listened to the old gardener that I finally started to realize how our minds and thoughts, working together, observe and relate to the realities in which we live. To date, I still haven't figured out how it all works. So even the Eric who's now teaching and sharing the little that he's understood with his clients, he doesn't really understand how it works, but he suddenly has seen that thought creates reality. Like everyone's walking around in their thought created version of reality and then having a lovely time or an awful time, depending on what it is they're creating. So simple. He doesn't know how it works, but as he's pointing it out to clients, because it's true, it's resonating with them and it's changing their lives. Bear with me while I find the next bit. We were given the 3 special gifts I just mentioned. But keep in mind, these 3 gifts are completely neutral. It's what you as a thinker do with them that is important. This is all, do you see, it's all on the same theme. This is why I'm getting this such simplicity core message of like, use the gift of thought wisely. That's it. And then this was, you know, sometimes you stop and you're like, oh, I'd never seen it that way before. So what about our moods, Peter asked. Are you saying that moods don't create our thoughts? On the contrary, answered Andy, it's the very opposite. Our thoughts allow our moods to exist. I'd never seen it that way around before. I'd seen that our state of mind goes up and down, and as it does, it produces thoughts of that quality, right? That directly reflect our state of mind. But I had never considered that our moods are created by the thoughts we indulge. So if we indulge sad thoughts, we're going to start creating a mood of depressed, low mood. If we start indulging anxious thoughts, we're going to be in a mood of anxiousness very quickly. So if we are finding ourselves in a mood, a particular mood or state of mind continually, like rushed or angry or upset or anxious, it's the only explanation for that is that we've just been innocently indulging a pile of anxious thought or depressed thought or rushed thought, maybe not even consciously, right? But it's just, there's a wave of that thought which creates that mood. So the principles are such a good descriptor. They're an explanation for why life works as it does. So if you're feeling in a low mood, that's why. Not because of your childhood, not because of your job, not because of your partner, not because of your lifestyle, not because of your finances, not because of any of that, but because you've been indulging low mood thinking. It changes the game of life entirely if you see this. It's not actually just, thought creates reality. I get that. No. If that's the way you feel about it, you've totally missed the point. This is the most groundbreaking, life-changing, awesome thing you could ever learn. And there's no end to the seeing of it. Like if you're saying, oh my God, like it's thought, and it's changing your life, that's when you're seeing this. It's so simple and yet so hard for the mind to comprehend, because it's not a mind thing. It's an insight based thing that you see, but you see it over and over and over and over again. The minute you get complacent with it, life whacks you upside the head and shows you something else that looks like it's really real on the outside, that's creating your experience on the inside, so that you can see again, that was thought too. Just like Mrs. Taylor and the others who say their lives have changed because they heard something regarding their thoughts, not through analysing their thoughts, but by seeing the power of thought itself. So it's seeing that we think, not what we think, that is the game changer. Okay, we keep coming back to this fact, but the content of your thinking, what you're thinking about, how fast you're thinking, what you're doing with your, like all of the content of thought is not what's relevant here. It's creating your experience, the content of your thinking, but you don't need to analyze it. You don't need to try and change it after it's already been thought. You get to see that you are doing it, and that's the game changer. Because when you see that that's what you're doing with it, you get to, like we looked at it in the course with Mavis, if you've done the one with Mavis, but that we think, and your feelings tell you how well you're using that gift. That's it. I'm doing lots of that's it's today. And finally, just this real simplicity of this. The gardener's reply excited me. The way I see it, Eric, universal thought, accompanied by our free will, gives us the ability to experience life. But remember, my friend, how you use this gift is entirely up to you. What if you didn't yeah but me on that? What if you didn't, oh yeah but free will, and off on a thought train about that? Yeah but I don't think, yeah but, what if you didn't? And you just considered that it might be true. That's what I'm going to leave you with for this first week, these first 5 chapters. So for next week, I'd like you to read chapters 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So from original thought to the end of thought and reality. Read those, reflect on those, and then come to watch the video next week. Share your takeaways in the Facebook group. I'd love to hear what you're hearing, both from this video and from the chapters. And I'll be back with you again next week. Take care.